My name is Joe Sawicki, and I am the host for the Samson Strength Coach Collective. I am happy to introduce Anthony Morando. We were joking about last week how long I've known Anthony, and when I first met him, my daughter was about 4 months old, and last week she just finished her first semester of college. So I've known Anthony for a good portion of time, about 18 years now, and get a chance to introduce you to Anthony Morando.
Thanks for having me, Coach. I really appreciate it. Right, it's
Absolutely.
Always good to be on a podcast. Always good to be catching up with you. I think everybody will hear through this podcast that you and I have not only known each other for 18 years, but we've kept a really good relationship. I guess somewhat of a working relationship. I'm not one of your athletes anymore either, so it's good. I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, that's right. So we can get into your background in a second here, but I just want to kind of give people a little bit of perspective, right? So I've known Anthony since he was a postgraduate student at Bridgeton Academy back in Maine. We've since both moved out to the Midwest. But I wanted to give first kind of the next step of what he's done he did in his life after he left Bridgeton Academy. He went to Springfield College, right? And I wanted to just kind of get into that real quick, because one of the things that I want to get a little perspective on is Springfield College has a ton of lore as far as the world of strength and conditioning goes. It is something that the world of strength and conditioning is kind of peppered with Springfield College graduates. Obviously, Tony is one of those as well. And before we kind of get into his time beyond Springfield College, I wanted to get a little bit of perspective into, from him, what makes Springfield College it's basically kind of the Athens, if you will, of strength and conditioning, and what makes it so special.
Okay, so quick background. Went to Bridgeton Academy, played football, got an opportunity to go to Springfield College to play football, and also participate in the major that I really wanted to get my degree in, which was exercise science. And the reason why Springfield was so appealing in the forefront is because I think the initial thought of being there was because everybody played a sport. And it didn't matter what sport you played, but it's a very athletic school. I guess I don't even know if jock is even like the proper terminology. It's athletic. It's a good field of fitness. You have classes called Fit for Life. You have classes that are tennis, basketball, but those classes aren't necessarily easy classes. They're not easy electives to take. You actually get coached on how to play. And in addition to that, you need to learn the rules and the dynamics of the game. So you get tested on all that. So I don't know, it's a very fit school mentally and physically. And that's the one thing that I can think of, I think, looking back on it now. As a student there, you're very engaged, especially in the exercise science world. You're very engaged. You're with like-minded people who all participate in health and wellness, and they all value what it does for the human body. And it's a very open-minded school, and I had a great experience. And, I'll always continue to talk about the experience I had at Springfield, and great teachers, great coaches, and great community.
And then, so once you left Springfield College, now kind of fill in the gaps.
Springfield, I always, I played football there for 4 years. I got really hurt. And I say that because that ties into my entire background of why fitness is so important for me now. So I got a very, very bad spine injury that turned into a worse spine injury as I grew older. And I feel like I need to say that because I feel like I can help out a lot of people. And we can tie that in after. But after Springfield, I always wanted to continue to work with football. So I got an internship at Boston College, and then I got another internship at Boston College. And it was either staying home as a Boston boy, right? Or or it was actually going out to either Arizona State or Chicago to fulfill another internship role. And I decided, hey, stay at BC. And little did I know it was going to be a great experience with football only. I interned with football only for my second internship, which became my GA. And I learned a lot under Jason Lascalzo for the short amount of time that I was at Boston College. From Boston College, and those were the years of 06, 07, 08, around that time period. So like I said, some really good athletes in the forefront of your career. Really, really good team. Great experience, especially being on the road. I got myself a special teams little position so I could travel, where I just helped out with signals, made myself pretty versatile. And, I did a little bit more than just stock shakes and wear sweatpants and carry a shaker bottle, right? So after BC, decided to leave. I linked up with Coach Boyle. I did an internship for him while I was at Springfield. Mike and I never met. It was always Walter Norton and Bob Hansen, co-owners at the time, and linked back up with the Boyle family and, got deep in that family until 2014. So spent a lot of time with Mike. I consider him a mentor. I consider him some type of relative to an extent. I don't know if it's a cousin or uncle, somebody who's just, over you in a positive way too. A guy that, if you do something right, you want him to praise you. If you do something wrong, you kind of say, oh, no. Right. And unfortunately, I did some wrong stuff. I did a lot of right stuff too. But, like I said, the career in that Boyle family sustained until 2014. While I was working for Mike, I was also the strength and conditioning coach at Boston University with men's ice hockey. And I had additional sports at the time too. I also worked with women's golf. And I also coordinated the internships for a little while as well. When you have a men's Division I ice hockey team to that caliber, national contender every single year, that overshadows a little bit. And that's not saying that that's the most important and whatnot, but BU is a big hockey school and had a job to do. And I had some big shoes to fill. That was Mike's former job. And I really honed in on it, and I committed. So after that, I decided to move. My fiance at the time, Monique, her and I met on a hockey trip in North Dakota in 2012. If Mike ever listens to this, I think he should feel somewhat responsible of having me meet my wife, I guess, because Mike was the women's national team trainer at the time for women's ice hockey for the Olympics in 2014. Monique and I kind of reunite, go out to dinner. Now we're married. We're about to have our second child, but I don't want to get too deep, right? But Monique and I met, and we decided that, I think that there was a change, that it wasn't completely needed, Coach, but I never really ventured out of Boston. Not that I never have been out of Boston, but career-wise. And Exos came about. Exos gave me an opportunity to work with them and to initially run a facility in the Midwest where my wife is from, including my sister-in-law. So both Monique and Jocelyn and myself and a few other people became employed through a health system, and we ran a powered by Exos facility inside of that health system. And then I left North Dakota, took a job at the University of Minnesota Duluth for a short amount of time. It was like I said, short amount of time. I decided that, being in the team setting compared to the private setting might have not have been the right choice with having a wife and possibly starting a family. Not saying that you can't do it. It's just for me. I said to myself, thinking back on this, I think moving forward, I need to reestablish my career and figure out what I really want to do. And I think that's going back into the private setting and be more of a hybrid. So that's where I am right now. And I'm employed through a health system, and I run a 10,000 square foot facility in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And that's my background. Those are the steps. I don't want to keep going. I don't want to bore you.
No. It's all very interesting. And I think that, it's one of those things where, it's kind of the steps that, every young strength coach kind of goes through. And, going through that, I guess, everybody, who works with Mike at some point, Mike Boyle, kind of considers him, their godfather, so to speak. And talk a little bit about kind of the philosophy and the mindset and all that comes from there, because I know that, there's a lot of people out there, that, once you go through either an internship or you've worked with him, there's a lot of people that either rightly or wrongly kind of consider you one of Boyle's guys. And, I want to talk a little bit about kind of where that all comes from and how that all kind of created the philosophy that you have right now.
Coach, the whole, I think people in this field, they put name dropping and they put their own perception on things like, oh yeah, well, he worked for this guy, so he must be like that. Like we're talking strength and conditioning, right? We're talking human performance. We're not on the Iraqi front where, we're battling an enemy. We're all in a group that has a huge commonality, and that's for the betterment of the insert here. It's an adult client, it's an athlete, it's a kid. So Mike's philosophy, I don't even know if Mike really has a training philosophy, and he could argue that, right? But Ron McKeefery said it perfect on a course from Brett Bartholomew called Valued. He said it perfectly. It's like, I don't have a philosophy. I'm a principle-based person. I'm going to find what works for this person, whether it's squatting on 2 feet or 1 foot, whether it's pressing with 2 arms or 1 arm, and I'm going to create the best effective movement for this person to create anatomical function or to maintain anatomical function. So, Mike's program, it's your basic effective dosage program that gets people better because it restores or it creates better anatomical function. That's it, which in turn means it just makes sense. Just to create an example, it's just looking at, it's looking at an overhead press. If that bicep isn't in line with the ear, EAR, okay, still have a bit of an accent. And if it's not a smooth overhead press, and if that arm isn't at a full lock of 90 degrees, then why train a bad pattern? Why load a bad pattern? Let's get it right. So that's the way I look at Mike or MBSC or just functional training in general. That's the way I look at training in general. I think fitness is a little bit different. I look at the training as the mechanical portion of it. When I think fitness, I think of more of the holistic deal where fitness is getting people moving. It's the celebration of life. It's getting a little bit deeper. It's intangibles that we can't really describe, but we might feel emotionally, and we might feel mentally. So that's a little bit of a deeper description, but Mike's program just makes sense, and it's taught me a lot about biomechanics. And I just sustain the principles that I learned at MBSC, at Exos, right? And you apply the principles, and you search for, hey, what's cutting edge or what's new or what are people doing right now? What's trending or what's being recycled? But at the end of the day, when it comes to principles, you stand like a rock. When it comes to style, you want to swim with the current. But you still want to go back to that rock. You got to find an anchor in your programming, and it keeps us sane. It keeps us efficient. So,
yeah, absolutely. I think I want to kind of segue that into, kind of where you are now, right? So you did the thing at Boston University. You were at Boston College. You worked at University of Minnesota Duluth for a little bit too. What were the biggest challenges that you had going from a team sport where, you're obviously you have to create buy-in, but you kind of have a captive audience, so to speak, right? So how do you do that, go into the position where you are now and, and kind of have to switch gears? You talk about fitness being fitness and, functional training being functional training. But now you've got people that are not necessarily being, kind of fed to you, but you have to have, you have to be able to give that to them as they walk in the door. If you don't mind taking a minute just to kind of talk about, how that's kind of changed your perspective.
Yeah, my perspective has changed because I think it's changed because I've grown up. My perspective can't change unless I grew. Your first job, whether it's BC, you're a little GA, I used to be a little meathead, and then I did. I used to lift, and I need a lift, right? And it was so much fun. I'm working with football, and look at me, I'm on the sideline, I'm on TV, cool. Like, at some point, I needed to grow out of that, and I didn't grow out of that until about 29. Maybe even 30. And I'll fully admit that. I think in order to have a larger perspective on whatever your audience is in this field, you need to grow up and realize that it's not about you. I wasn't, my lens wasn't like that in my 20s. It's sure as hell like that in my 30s. And people who hear this or who know me, like my mindset, like I'm still the same kid at heart, right? Like there's certain things that are still the same about me, but I look at things and I receive things a lot differently than I used to. And working with teams, it's about that team. It's about taking care of those kids at any time, pretty much of the day. You have to be available and adaptive. You can give, Jack Eichel a hex bar deadlift or hex bar squat, however you want to skin that cat. And you can give him a pull up and you can say, yeah, well, you know what? He's extremely strong and his stride level's out of control. But at the end of the day, like you're there to take care of him. You want to make sure that an athlete like that stays healthy and that he can produce on the first line every single night. Where if you have a person who's coming in who isn't playing, not getting any time on ice, then what do you do with them? And that's a larger conversation. Anybody can train a really, really good pro athlete. I mean, they're pretty easy to train. You give them a program, you make sure the program is fitting, and then you say, go. If you need me. If you have somebody who needs to rededicate themselves to the weight room and they need to gain weight or they need to lose body fat, that's a different project. So you have to tap into that differently from a mental standpoint, from a physical standpoint. And now taking the athlete out of the equation and looking at an adult client or an injured person coming back from surgery or just a typical weight loss client, those are 3 to 4 different lenses that you have to use too. And then you have to be a transactional coach, meaning you have to create a sale. And then you have to be a transformational coach, meaning that you better get results or else you're not going to have another sale. So you tie in the financials, you tie in the marketing, you tie in the strength conditioning, or you tie in your fitness expertise, whatever you want to call it. I think what's pretty savvy right now is performance. People are using performance a whole lot because it is fitting, because everybody has to perform. And I can tell you, I have clients, coach, who are 25 years old in an adult group training class, and I got 7 clients who are over the age of 70. And my 25-year-old is doing a hex bar pull off the ground. My 70-year-old is doing a band pull through, but the pattern is very similar, just at a different range of motion, higher surface, lower surface, however you want to call it. Pregnant women working out who can't, do not go over the limit of 8 on an RPE scale. You can't exceed 8, right? Just using that as a barometer. And then I can't have you in a supine position because you're in your second trimester, and I need you standing on your last phase, and I need you pushing sleds instead of doing a bilateral squat now because, again, the range of motion is different. It's less stress on the pelvis. Again, whatever, but I'm just explaining this because that's how my perspective has to change on a consistent basis. And it's different. It's different for an ankle. It's different for a knee, for a hip, for a shoulder, for a 70-year-old, for a 25-year-old, for an athlete, for an adult who just wants to get after it in the gym. It's all different. But being adaptable is the biggest strength that I can have. And I have to constantly refine that adaptability.
Yeah. And I think that's kind of an understated characteristic that I think that, when young strength coaches are getting into the position and they, take for you as an example, you go to, you're at Boston College, you do your Boston College thing. And unfortunately, I think that, the people that I've come to contact with, especially kind of early in their career, that's who they are and that's what they know. And, and I love the fact that you just said that, adaptability is, it took you a while to get there. But, for sure, it's one of those things that I don't think that enough people, kind of keep that in the forefront of their mind that, no matter where you are, you're going to have to adapt in some way, shape or form. And I think it's just really cool that, you went from working with,
lights shut off. Sorry.
I think it's really cool that you went from working with, the cream of the crop at the NCAA level in ice hockey to, working with, 70-year-olds, 25-year-olds in a fitness class, pregnant women, so on and so forth. I actually wanted to kind of talk about that because, for those of you who follow Anthony on social media, which if you don't, you definitely should, because he posts a lot of good stuff. One of the things that I find really, really fascinating is your work with pregnant women. And obviously it kind of hits a little closer to home with you right now because you've got a wife and you've got a sister-in-law that you're training both of them through. You've already done it through one pregnancy. Now you're doing it through another. I just want to kind of get a little bit of the idea that, you've kind of, I don't know where it's come from, whether you've developed it, whether you've kind of taken it from other places. But I really think that, that's one thing that, as we talk about the world of strength and conditioning, the first thing that pops into mind is, the Scott Cochrans of the world, the guys that are at the University of Alabama and Texas and Southern Cal and Clemson and all these guys that are at, the big Power 5 football programs. But the world is way, way bigger than that. And I find it fascinating, the work that you're doing with your wife, with your sister-in-law, and how did that kind of came together for you?
Well, I think when it comes to learning how to modify and learning how to train people, and I'll go back to Mike. If people take the CFSC, the Certified Functional Strength Coach certification, that's our livelihood that we worked with at MBSC, because we learn how to train on the fly, whether it's a group of youth kids, whether it's a group of high school kids or a group of adults. And we need to know that, hey, if this person can't bilaterally squat, then maybe we're going to go for a bilateral hinge, right? And so on and so on. And again, like I don't want to take too long to answer your question. It's modifying range of motion. It's finding fit-in sequences that fit the individual. So when a woman's pregnant, and if her stomach is out to here, then she might have extrakyphosis in her lower back or lordosis in her lower back, right? So I have to be able to continue to find that fit. I have to see if her spine is neutral in certain positions. I have to see if her shoulder range of motion is different because she's carrying basically X amount of weight in her midsection. So that's what it really comes down to, Coach. It's continuing to modify and adjust and adapt what fits the individual. Now, you can screen somebody. There's plenty of screens out there now that are going to determine what movement efficiency is for somebody. But at the end of the day, it's very simple to see a dynamic warm-up. Okay, it's very simple to look at your basic squat, hinge, push-pull patterns and make a decision based off of that, or just simply observe and watch a training session. I know it sounds, it's so easy though. Yeah, it's easy, but I mean, I want to be really, really, really good at those simple measures. And that's exactly what it comes down to when you're training somebody who's pregnant or training somebody who's injured.
And that brings me to kind of back to what you said earlier about the injury that you suffered while you were playing football. Kind of talk about how that has influenced your perspective as well, because, you said that it went from something bad to something worse. And now that's that plays a big part in how you approach your training as well.
It does. And the first thing I do, I had a herniated L4, L5 region in my lumbar. And it happened after a scrimmage my sophomore year at Springfield. And I just woke up the next day with disc pain. And anybody who has disc issues knows that the pain is unbearable. And when that pain is unbearable, you go into a whole nother world, whether it's, well, first off, medicine, that's one. And then two, you just become significantly either anxious or kind of down, a little depressed, because you don't know how to exercise pain-free anymore. And that took me all the way up until between 25 to 29 years old. I ended up having 2 back surgeries. And I point the thumb, right? Thumb goes to me. It's nobody else to blame but me. I didn't listen, or I didn't adapt to, maybe I shouldn't squat from an axial standpoint anymore. Maybe I shouldn't load my spine anymore. But I didn't adapt. It's 25, I was fine, right? Or 29, you're fine. Well, my discs ended up herniating even more. And I had a microdiscectomy in 2009. I had a microdiscectomy in 2013. And I had a hip labral repair too in 2013. So it all sounds like a whole lot. I said after that last surgery, like, I think I need to make a change in my life here. So I did. And I started really, just reading more and training in a different format and making sure that I was doing the right things. And there's a book by Stuart McGill called Gift of Injury. And my injury turned things into a gift. I became a better performance specialist because of it. I knock on wood, haven't had pain since the end of 2013. And I've just adapted to new training regimens for myself. They're pretty boring, but they're basic, they're simple, and my nutrition has changed a whole lot since then too. And, instead of a heavy squat now, maybe it's a heavy reverse lunge, 2 dumbbells loaded, or maybe it's a heavy sled push instead. But this is the best shape that I've personally ever been in. I feel way more fit mentally and physically, and better person because of it. And I can definitely take care of people that I work with as well. Being a life-changing professional is pretty much, I think, what defines all of us at the end of the day. And because of that injury, I feel like I can be a life-changing professional.
Kind of explain that a little bit deeper.
Yeah, sure. I think I can bring a sense of empathy to people who do have back pain. Okay. And who, are going through, whether you call it suffering or whether you call it an unfortunate situation, but some people don't know how to train when they suffer an injury like that. But some people don't know how to train when they suffer an injury, period. And I believe that I have the empathy and I have the drive to show them the way. And like, again, instead of, hey, you know what, we don't have to load your spine. We can do this. We can bottom load this instead and put a mini band around your ankles to engage your glutes more. And this might create a little less pressure for your lower back. Those are the conversations that I get to have. So if I get to have those conversations and I can install the right training regimen for those people, and I can show them that their injury isn't going to compromise them, but it's actually going to help them become in better shape, then I'm a life-changing professional. I believe that. They believe that. That's what defines me.
Mm-hmm. And so, all right, to kind of segue into another question. So someone walks in the door. How do you create that initial buy-in with them? How do you, it's obviously pretty clear how you continue to engage them and how you continue to, that become that transformational coach. But how do you first do that transactional coach?
Call it a strategy session. And what we do is we strategize for about 45 minutes. Actually,
and you're talking about you and the person that you're with, right?
Yep. Just give them a little lifestyle questionnaire.
Okay.
And Microsoft Word. And basically take them through 6 to 7 questions about their nutrition, 3 to 4 questions about their family and job, And then likes and dislikes of exercises, like what do you really like about exercise? And then what do you effing hate? Right. And then in addition to that, no, I'm not supposed to swear. And then in addition to that, do you have any aims? I don't say the word goals a whole lot. I feel like I've been goal setting for like 36 years now. That's what you hear everybody say. So I just say aim. Aim. Like, what are you aiming at? Like, what are you trying to get to? And that acronym that I use, I wrote an article on it, and that's it. And it creates a really good conversation. It does. In the Midwest, what helps me out, Coach, is my accent kind of ties people in. So it's not the worst thing in the world having a Boston accent in North Dakota. It's a little tinted, but I'm just joking. I'm just trying to get a little bit of a smile too. But I think sitting down and just really, excuse me, trying to know the person. I just had a father and a son sign up for semi-group private training, which we're doing a lot of now because of the virus. And it's a pleasure training them, but I wouldn't have been able to train the 15-year-old son and the 56-year-old father without getting to know them first. Mm-hmm. The father told me, I hate burpees. Oh, sir, you're never going to have to do a burpee again. As well, as long as you're in here, you're never going to have to do a burpee again. And, you just try to find out those little things. That's just being a person.
Yep. Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess, one of the things that I do want to kind of touch upon is that your program is not completely different than, what you might find at a collegiate level. You have a staff, you work collectively with healthcare providers, you work collectively with dietitians, kind of talk about how you've been able to tie all of those things together.
The best way to tie those together is just having an open mind, making sure that you understand what a continuum of care is about. Meaning that, the philosophy, whatever you have on the floor, it might need to change for a person who is 75 years old, right? Might need to change for a person who's 12 years old or who's 15 years old. A PT, an AT, and a doctor, us as performance specialists, performance dietitians, it's very easy to all speak differently, but it's very easy to all be on the same page. Doctor wants the person to get better. Okay? Here's my checklist. I got to send him to the next professional that's that's closest to I. Okay? And then how do we communicate from there? So it's a line of communication. I think sometimes what disrupts that line of communication is egos. And that does get in the way at times, but it's not just for a performance specialist. You got egos there, but you got egos in the PT and doctoral setting too. No bigger ego than a doctor. Okay. Or a PT too. They think that, I did this and this is end all be all. That's not the case either. Like, I know that we might not have those degrees, but at the same time, I feel like we're very educated in here to also come up with our own opinion. So lines of communication, trying to empathize, put yourself in other people's situations, and just know that you'll never know it all. Never. So I'm very, I'll always admit that too, right? I can always learn, and I try to continue to learn. I think that's the best answer for it too. And it's just genuine. I can't really BS that one.
No, not at all. So now talk about the continuum, right? So, how does your system work both ways in terms of, you're being able to help educate the people that you work with, like I said, you work with ATs and PTs and doctors and, and all these other healthcare providers. How have you been able to kind of provide your own, kind of footprint, so to speak, on the organization that you're working with?
Yeah, I think a health system in general is always going to say, how do we keep it in the health system? How do we funnel back? How do we funnel forward? Cool thing about a performance program like this is the goal goal for them, I'm calling it a goal because they call it a goal, is to independently receive clientele from physical therapy.
Mm.
And that's a continuum of care, returning them or integrating them into performance for life. From the doctor and the PT or AT standpoint, they're trying to get them to a point where they can integrate into their own life again and not need them anymore. And you deal with insurance-based, we're cash-based. So you deal with that. I think the missing link is to how do you link those? And that's always that's a gray area. And that's not in my forte because I understand it, coach, but it's not my role to try to create that model where insurance pays for what and vice versa.
Yeah.
But it's getting these people to a point where, and the continuum is this, like from the hierarchy, from the construct, is getting these people to a point where they can independently salvage for themselves. And that links to training, that links to fitness. And fitness, again, it's the celebration of life that you're able to move again. So what are you going to do? What are you going to do with it? But that's also an accountability factor on the individual. And we can only do so much.
So I guess that kind of, to kind of come full circle, right? I mean, you're working, with the hockey team at Boston University. Not every one of those guys is going to play professional hockey.
No.
So, I guess the idea kind of falls into the same line, right? How do you get these guys to be, kind of self-motivated to continue their fitness through the rest of their life?
And that was one of my favorite things about working at BU and Duluth. The guys who didn't play as much, the guys who, or the women too, we just created an awesome program for them to stay fit, to stay healthy, and to motivate them that way. Hey, this health and wellness is going to hopefully become a habit for you and not a burden down the road because you met somebody like me.
Right.
Because I helped you adopt that lifestyle to an extent. So, I think again, it goes back to being a life-changing professional. If health and wellness becomes a habit instead of a burden, then I think I did my job. I think I did.
Yeah.
For an athlete, for an adult, doesn't really matter, right? But not even getting, there's no political attached to this, but our country right now, we have a lot of people who are obese, and you see kids who are obese, and I see it right now. And I would really like to just encourage more movement and a little bit of better health style, whether it's a lifestyle, rather, whether it's eating or moving more, whatever it is. But you don't want to see anybody break down and be compromised because they didn't take care of themselves the best they could. But people need to be educated with that too. So.
Okay. So I want to totally switch gears here. I want to talk a little bit about your work with the Boston University hockey team. Okay. So now, one of the things that I've been really blessed with in my career has been the opportunity to interact with some coaches. And I think that's one of those things that I don't think people take seriously enough, is the opportunity to sit in on meetings, to be able to talk, about the, coaching philosophy with, guys that, are at the top of their game. And, you were in the same place as, one of the greatest college hockey coaches in NCAA history. What are some of the takeaways that you got working with Coach Parker?
Well, first off, I spent the whole flight with him coming back from Denver. So what I did find out about him right away is he loved movies. So I knew right away with Coach Parker, if I ever engaged in a conversation, I better know every single detail about that subject because he caught me on something. And I forgot a line. I forgot something from the movie Raging Bull. Okay. And he said the line, and I kind of looked at him like, huh? He's like, you know what I'm talking about or no? And I went, oh, no. Right? So my feet were in quicksand there. But from Coach Parker, it was details. Details were, I guess, number one. That's the first thing that comes to mind. And work hard. I was there for 2 years with Coach Parker. That first year, I was there pretty much part-time with Mike. The second year, I was full-time on my own. So he was a great guy to be around. His image was spectacular, especially being from Massachusetts. You feel pretty cool sitting with him, right? But a great man who was very detail-oriented, who cared about the game of hockey, who cared about his players. And another big takeaway with Coach Parker is that he really cared about his family. And I saw him get to interact with his family firsthand, and it made me very happy. Loved his grandkids, daughters. So it was pretty cool to see, because I'm not going to lie to you, I was scared of him. He didn't talk to me a whole lot. Then he started talking to me, and I realized, okay, this is good. When he retired, it was a huge deal around BU.
Oh yeah.
But it gave me a chance to really get close to another guy. And I love Coach Quinn. I always will. He's one of the greatest guys I ever met. And I got really close to him over those years. So I can dive into Coach Quinn too, but
go ahead. I think that's, that's
Coach Quinn was a younger coach who,
right.
His style, it was definitely similar to Coach Parker's, but what I took away from Coach Quinn was you can be fair, F-A-I-R, you can be fair to your players, but you can also be demanding. You can also be demanding, but you can also be fair. And Coach Quinn was a very polished speaker, and he could take words, whether they were negative or positive, and he could just make them sound even more positive.
Okay.
His tempo was very upbeat. He was a huge asset in my life because he was a coach who valued fitness. Okay. He's a very fit man. He still is a fit man. He's the head coach for the New York Rangers. And he took fitness seriously. So the weight room to him, it was this room where, things needed to really go well. And he was in there, and he was in there all the time, whether it was hanging out, having a cup of coffee, or he was getting his own workout in. But the vibe was just great with him around. The morale was great with him around. And
did you find it intimidating with him around as much as he was?
Not at all.
Okay.
Not one bit. If anything, he helped me a lot. He did. He polished me up a lot, I think, becoming a better coach, especially in the last year before I moved. He was always interested in the things that I was doing. He was always asking me questions. He was always asking me what I needed. So he took a lot of interest in me. And when you're a guy in a leadership role like that, and me, I was 29. I was still, I'm 36 now, but at my age, I wasn't overly young, but still I'm looking at him going, wow, this guy really cares about me. I want to make sure I'm taking care of this team as best as I possibly can to the nth degree, because I have the head coach's support too. And a lot of that probably has to do with, he knows what my background was, he knows I worked for Mike. He knows that if I was under that roof at Aganis, that Mike isn't just going to throw somebody in there. He's not going to help somebody just get that job. I mean, I obviously did something well enough to have that role. But I cared about BU, Coach. I cared about BU so much. And I still do. I miss that job very much, and I always will. So can tell by the sound of my voice that there's always a little bit more passion there than anywhere. Or fire, or whatever you call it.
So I guess, so I do want to talk kind of on the back side of that. I know, and I don't want to talk poorly about anybody. But I do know that your experience at UMD was quite a bit different. And I want to talk about some of the challenges that you had there in terms of, as a professional, just to kind of as kind of a life's tale type of a thing.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up. And I'm not it was no one like, I would never say anything bad about anybody either. I think the construct there was I was overseen by a head athletic trainer. At BU, I wasn't. So there was a big difference there. The head athletic trainer in BU and I had an unbelievable relationship. I mean, he busted my chops nonstop. But, I mean, that's the only way I knew he liked me.
Mm-hmm.
Shout out to Larry there if you ever – I don't even know if he listens to podcasts. But it was different at Duluth. The individual was my boss, essentially. So weren't the two head coaches, but I had to report to my boss. She was in charge. She was there for a long, long time at Duluth, still is. And I just, I don't know, didn't feel as welcome, I guess. Felt distant every now and then. One of the student coaches would come in and say, hey, this person can't go on the ice, or this person shouldn't do, no deadlifts, no lunges, no squats. Okay. And I felt like just because that was said, the athlete intercepts that or perceives that as, well, I can't do any of these lifts. So to me, ruffles, feathers, and on, it's not the right way to go about things. And it's not a holistic model. Hey, I don't want him specifically putting unilateral strain on that kneecap. So, Anthony, do you have 3 or 4 different exercises that we could experiment with instead that maybe we can optimize his injury?
Nope.
But that would take work. And the other problem I have with that is that I've never seen the people who are in the positions to make the decisions on how to put somebody back on the ice. They don't train. They don't go through these movements. They don't understand what it's like to maybe be over a dumbbell or under a bar for a certain amount of time. So it's hard for me to say, okay, yeah, that's fine, but I've never seen you in the weight room before. Not once. It's like taboo if they come in, and that's not the case. That's not what I wanted. I could have stayed there and tried to create that, and probably over time I would have gotten that. But I don't know. I just didn't want to deal with it. I wasn't dealing with it before. Maybe I didn't adapt well enough either, right? It's probably didn't. Probably could have changed things a little bit. But it's also at a different point coach where I was a little older, had 2 teams, and I said to myself, I feel like I can make more money somewhere else too. So, but just to say on that topic about the model, that was my experience. It just wasn't holistic like it should have been. And again, not just pointing fingers, like maybe some me too, right? Like,
right. Yeah. No, I mean, I think there's a lot of value, like I said, as sort of like a life lesson type of a thing here in terms of, there's a model that fits for everybody. And I think, once you've kind of been through, I honestly think, it's hard to make that kind of assumption off of, 1 or 2 positions, especially if you found them and you really, really like it. And it's, everybody kind of, I feel like somebody has to go through something that they don't like in order to really appreciate what they do like, so, yeah.
I agreed. And I'm that type of person. I'm that personality too. I have to do things 5 times wrong in order to get it right. Mm-hmm. Sometimes those lessons are really hard. Sometimes you shrug your shoulders and you say, it could have been worse. I know that if for me to sustain a successful career and to continue to do so, I think a hybrid type of coach, and we've talked about this, I think a hybrid type of coach is in my forte because I like to roam. I like to be free. I still like training athletes. I have an awesome high school hockey team from Minnesota that I love training. The boys, right? Mm-hmm. Hey, the boys are in the weight room. Then I have a female team from Minnesota. The ladies are here. They're working hard. They're pushing weight. They're having fun. They have different aims than the men do, but it's synchronized. It's a good environment. And then you have my ageless group. When I say ageless, that's a 70+ group, right? Mm-hmm. Who are squatting, deadlifting, carrying things, moving around in a non-friction environment. And then I have adults who are training for life. It's a great deal. It's fitness at its best. And they're different vessels. And you're becoming a life-changing professional throughout those different vessels. And, I really appreciate it. And fitness is a big part of my life. And it's it's helped my back pain and it's helped my life. And my wife and I both value it very much. And health and wellness is I think it's a great light to shine upon other people.
No, and I totally agree. And I think that the way that you just framed it right there, I think it's if I was a young professional kind of looking into the field going, do I want to go the private sector? Do I want to go, school, club, pro, all of that? The way that you just painted it right there, it sounds really, really cool. The fact that you get to spend your time working with people of all different backgrounds, and you still get to do the team training. You still get to do that, but at the same time, you get to take a step to the side and say, okay, you know what? I'm going to work with this somebody who's coming back from an injury so that they can appreciate how to stay healthy and how to minimize problems down the road. I think that's awesome, and actually that kind of was one of the last questions that I had was, how, what you see into your future. I think that, so I'm going to kind of take another route here and ask you, a couple of questions off of the script here. The one of the things that I wanted to kind of give the people that are listening to this is, so you've been through it, you've been through all of the models, you've kind of gone, one direction, with the college route, you've been in one direction with the private group. What, kind of looking at your career, what would you say the pluses and minuses are giving for young strength coaches coming up? What advice do you have?
I said this on a podcast before, Coach McKeefery. Always give full disclosure. Don't bite the hand that feeds you. So you got to appreciate your mentors. You got to realize that they were you once, and you need to listen up more and really respect the territory that they've provided for you. That's number one. So give full disclosure. Even if you feel like you did something wrong, just say that you did it wrong. Right? So that's a hard lesson that I learned. And I'll say that, Coach, I'll say that on every podcast in the next 40 years, 50 years. Okay. Give full disclosure. Because if not, it's going to bite you in the ASS. And number two, it'd be just I know people say never stop learning. Don't stop learning, but find what you want to commit yourself to learning find the learning commitment that you want to commit yourself to. So you're never going to be a jack of all trades, because then you end up becoming a master of none. So what are you interested in? And then dedicate yourself to it. Me, I've changed lanes. I am just looking at fitness and what it's doing now mentally and physically for people, and how can I help people through exercise? Not just Verkachansky's, books or Franz Bosch's books. Not saying that stuff isn't important. That's for the practical application. That's great stuff to know. But I'm not going to sit here and do a 4-year macro cycle and have this great planner. I've become a better performance specialist because of the adaptability, adaptable programming. Plan for the absolute worst, right? And then work your way up, because that's exactly what happens. It's a chaotic environment, whether it's a team or an adult group or even personal training. And I think the big, that's number two. Number three is this: stay in shape, stay fit. And that doesn't mean a 6-pack and an artificial tan. Doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that at all. It means staying fit to support what your body needs. Okay. And that can be anything. It doesn't have anything to do with looking the part. It has to do with make sure you're moving well, make sure you're understanding what you're giving to people, and make sure you understand how it feels. And I think at the end of the day, if we exercise, right? Exercise, you never regret it when you do it. You always regret it when you don't. And that's gonna keep you sharp. It's gonna keep your head on a swivel. So staying healthy is a very, very big deal.
And then I guess lastly, we're kind of wrapping up on time here. Is there anything that that we didn't talk about that you wanted to talk about?
I think to put the cap on the bottle, Coach.
Yeah.
These facilities in the country, a performance facility, a place like the one I work at, a place like Mike's, and we can name them all, right? It'll take forever. Community. Community is everything. Where you work, it's community. That's the best part about anybody's job. It's community. It's waking up saying, hey, you know what? I can't wait to see these people today. I can't wait to get these people better. Maybe I'm spending a holiday party with them, right? Or maybe we have when the time is right, a gathering. Not now, not lately. But when the time is right, we're having a gathering to celebrate, everybody's effort, everybody's commitment to the gym, everybody's way of life, that we're all having a commonality of being fit. That's my favorite part about it. So if somebody gets into this field, what type of community do you want to create around yourself? What type of community that I guess you want to belong to? At the end of the day, like, we all want to have a meaningful life. And a lot of that has to do with the positive community. So that's what fitness, that's how fitness relates to my life too. And I hope everybody can find that meaning.
Great finish. Coach, I want to thank you for taking the time out today. I had a lot of fun doing this. This is the first time I've ever done this, and I couldn't think of somebody better to do this with.
I you know what? I enjoy it too. And it's fun. I've known you since I've been a kid. So it's, you said it comes full circle, right?
Yes, it does. It most certainly does.
Thank you for your time, and I hope people enjoy it.
Absolutely.